I'm going to talk about JavaScript and other things to do with the web, and I'll try to go fast. I may have a few demos. I like to use Bruce Campbell's character of Ash from Evil Dead as my spirit animal, because he was tough. He wasn't a crybaby about it. He just got a chainsaw and got busy. And that's what you have to do on the web. It's not ideal, right? You have to make do with things that were frozen in the Browser Wars 1 or version 2 or 3. The Browser Wars are continuing. So things are getting better, though. There's a big concern that the smartphone is changing the internet forever. And I think that's true, but apps are not a great model. They'll never rival the web. You have to ask permission. I know this personally from Brave. You have to hope to get in the top 10 or 20 or 100, and if you don't, you're in trouble. And yet these web-like operating systems, we tried Firefox OS, Samsung tried Tizen, didn't get traction. So what we're seeing now is co-evolution of the web standards with the two dominant smartphone OSs, Android and iOS. And people got concerned. I think it was a year ago that Flipkart, the #1 e-commerce site in India, took down its website. They had an app, and they were #1 with that app, so why did they need a website? It seemed like it was bad for the web. It turned out they were working with Google to bring it back as what's called a progressive web app. Does everybody know what that is? It uses service workers. It tries to work offline as well as online. Service workers are pretty awesome. They're part of this extensible web manifesto philosophy that the blog post I blew past, the Flipkart guys wrote, discuss that I'm a co-signer of. Extensible Web Manifesto says we should make the web better from the bottom up so that developers can put libraries and frameworks and tools on top of it and meet us in the middle, so that the standards bodies don't go off inventing frameworks, because they aren't very good at it. They're better at providing kernel semantics. And so this is Jake Archibald's great logo for service workers. It has Happy Cat TIE Fighter. Is that Sonic? I don't even know what that is. And I think that's a Klingon ship. Anyway, this is a W3C meme. Service workers are actually a big deal. So everybody here, learn about them, use them, help them become as awesome as they should be. I think they're in Chrome and Firefox, and they're coming to all the others. Even the WebKit track said something about, I guess we have to do service workers now. Grumble, grumble. So what's the problem, right? The web is getting better. The OSs have these gatekeepers that run app stores. Security isn't great, walled gardens. But the web is not going away. And web developers arguably have it better than ever. In fact, there's so many frameworks now, the tyranny of choice and the ability to write a big JavaScript that blocks your page layout for 20 seconds on mobile is great. It's awesome. Don't do that, by the way. When I created JavaScript, I had to make it so that the script tag blocked rendering, because the only way I could think to make JavaScript able to render code was to inject it with document write, which is still used. And whether you use document write or DOM constructor calls, create element in S, you're blocking the rest of the page. And an async script doesn't do this, but people still write sync scripts, so watch out. The thing about the web that I'll stress in this talk is that it's inherently non-minimal. It has to be. It's the biggest platform that has multiple implementations based on consensus standards, so it grows compatibly. No one wants to break the web except over sort of geologic deep time. And those compatibility breaks are sometimes accidental or just retrospective. They're just saying, hey, nobody uses it anymore, let's drop it. So you have to go back in deep time to understand my next point, which is about a project whose name rhymes with Leif. He was the Bieber of his day. Things have not gone as well lately. The beard, though, reminds me of Doug Crockford, who created Project Safe, not Leif. Doug was never a teen idol. I think he might have been in a band once, though. Doug is very serious, and I get what he's trying to do. He's a minimalist, and this is a good exercise to do. It's not probably going to get wide adoption, this Project Safe, but it may have influence. We'll see. This is an example of minimalist art and sculpture. The funny thing about these minimalist artists, they often don't have titles for their work. So I think that one in the upper right is untitled. The other one's called like Leaning Slab or something. That one has a cool name. That's Free Ride on the lower right. Tony Judd, I think. The web is not minimalist. just has to be that way. And yet it's also made the minimalist plans of people like Rob Pike now at Google kind of irrelevant on the broad internet. There's still great systems research happening. It's just happening at Google more than it is at academia. It's happening at MSR. And it's showing up in servers. It's showing up a little bit in browsers. It's showing up especially in JavaScript engines. I started out on Unix. I was a big Unix hacker at Silicon Graphics, and I loved Unix. It was minimal. It's kind of had that Doug spirit. If you look at the original version 6 Unix system call table, there wasn't a lot of JavaScript, WTF, WAT, cringing gaffes like I had in JavaScript. It was not rushed in 10 days. It was done over many years in the 70s. Ken Thompson, the co-creator, said the only thing he would do differently if he did it over again was spell creat properly with an E at the end. But I love Unix. It's very minimal, beautiful. The web is not Unix. So I've done this since last fall, and it's still true. TC39 is now a new world. The worm has turned, and Google is acting more like Microsoft did in the old days, I guess because they have a lot of market share. They're saying, oh, I'm not sure we can do all this. Let's cut something. Let's not do it. Let's change it. Microsoft is kind of acting more like Mozilla. They open sourced Chocolate Core, their JavaScript engine, on GitHub. Can you believe it? They used to not do open source. Their lawyers wouldn't let them. Apple's still Apple. I mean, you can count on some things. It's just like the 90s, the noughties now. I guess Android is Windows. There are some new proposals coming. I'll talk about one of them. The private state for classes, not sure where that's going, needs more work. Yehuda Katz's decorators proposal is looking better. When I did this slide originally at Brooklyn JS, it caused Zeigenvector to say, rare insight into the goings-on Mount Olympus. And I had this idea that TC39 is Mount Olympus, but who's Zeus? There isn't any Zeus on TC39. So I started deciding I was going to throw lightning bolts. So I did this provocative slide. And I do think the committee is still working fairly well, but you have to watch out. If Microsoft is the new Mozilla, something's wrong. This is Yehuda Katz's decorator proposal. Some of you who've used Java will know at least the syntax. The idea is to do runtime metaprogramming on declarations. Inside classes, on whole classes. Ideally, you could do it on functions, too. You could say, make this getter called kidCount non-enumerable, and you could just say @non-enumerable, and there you go. So the thing after the @ is an expression that evaluates to a function to call, and when you call it, you pass in the prototype object, the name of the property, or getter in this case, and a property descriptor, something you may know from ES5. That was the basis for all the proxies and metaprogramming APIs that have come since ES5. Here's another example that shows the thing after the @ is really an expression. It gets evaluated. So it gets called in this case. It's enumerable. It's a function. It's a higher order function because it returns a function. And that's what actually is invoked as the decorator. And that way you can parameterize it with enumerable false, enumerable true. This is looking pretty solid. I'm not sure when this will show up, but it's moving along thanks to Yehuda Katz and others in the TC39 committee. The most exciting thing for me, though, in the last year has been WebAssembly. This is a headline from InfoWorld just the other week, and a cool kind of op art, is that pop art version of browser logos. No Brave there yet. WebAssembly started from ASM.js, and this is important. It wasn't just that it started from something that was emerging among several browser implementers. ASM.js actually was always in JS. I always had put the shift operators and the bitwise operators in there. There was always this ability to cast to integer types, to do things that could be efficiently compiled almost to a safe assembly code. It got discovered in the course of Alon Zakai building Mscripton to compile games, basically cross-compile C++ games to the web. And then it got formalized with Dave Herman and got implemented super fast by Luke Wagner at Mozilla. And then Microsoft got it, they did it too. So it was this rolling stone of building on some DNA that was always there in JavaScript, and then thinking about how to self-mutate, how to extend that DNA in short hops from where it is today. And that led to the idea of WebAssembly, which is now happening in all 4 major browser vendors. They're working on GitHub. They're working in a community group in the W3C. There is a project in each of these engines to do WebAssembly as a native input type. WebAssembly is just another syntax for JavaScript at first. It's really a syntax for just the ASM.js subset, but over time it can grow and diverge. So it becomes a fast way of loading binary code that is safe, quick, self-verifying code that can do things that JavaScript can't. So at some point, WebAssembly becomes the safe native format for the web. And you know, the InfoWorld headline was a little bit cautious, saying may come. I think it's clear there will be WebAssembly in experimental or nightly or canary tech preview releases this year. There's a syntax for it if you want to look at it. This is not how you load it. It's a binary syntax. It's a very efficient bitwise encoding of abstract syntax trees, parse trees. But if you want to look at it in a debugger, it's nice to have something that looks like Lisp. So this is my revenge on being told to make it look like Java when I was doing JavaScript in 10 days. And it is Unix in the sense that it's this minimal sort of safe native format. It's like Unix, which Windows has become equivalent to, co-expressive with in its kernel semantics. That's really good news. So let me do a few demos. I'm going to try to switch. That one, Heroes of Paragon, you can find it on Facebook. You can play it. You have to be logged in because game developers want to get paid for the in-game upsells. But, you know, that's OK. This is a WebGL demo that is called Teleporter. It's pretty cool because it shows the latest WebGL 2 features. It's showing the Unity engine. And it's interesting because WebGL 2 is really just based on OpenGL ES3, I think 3.2. It's not the most advanced version of OpenGL. So I think there's a lot of headroom for the graphics processing unit to be programmed safely from the web. I think WebGL 3 should happen. We should put in things like compute shaders, things like that. And yet you can get these awesome graphics right now using WebGL 2 in the latest browsers. Awesome. And it's pre-compiled. When you compile ASM.js, the good implementations keep the machine code around cached. So, and with WebAssembly, it's even better. In fact, WebAssembly, it's so concise compared to the JavaScript, it's even minified as ASM.js, that it can be faster to load the WebAssembly today and have a little shim library generate ASM.js from the WebAssembly. So people saw this last year, but it's still a lot of fun. And there are my beloved sentry chickens again. Which means I don't have to kill any zombies myself. I can collect their money, though, because these zombies are really carrying a lot of cash. So this is another Unity game. Unity is just another game engine that runs on your PlayStation or Xbox. It runs on, 2 chickens, thank you chickens. Runs on the web now because you can just press a button and get JavaScript, ASM.js, and WebGL. Thank you, chickens. This is a good one. This always winds people up. Unreal Engine. I want to give Unreal time, too, as well as Unity, since both of them are supporting the web. And this is an unreleased, I think, unreleased Unreal Tournament level, at least unreleased on the web, which is cool. The fly-through, the magnificent lighting effects, and then gameplay, if I'm any good at this anymore. I haven't played this in a while. Speaking of God rays, I'm in God mode, so I cannot be killed, which is good. I haven't played this. And again, we're using web audio, using WebGL, using ASM.js, but this source code was written in C++. This is just an Unreal Engine 3 game. Unreal Engine 4 is being ported. JavaScript is actually, along with WebAssembly, growing the threads that are needed to make these kind of games work really fast. Unreal Engine 4 wants to be a multi-threaded game. So the point of all this, which I've been making, I kind of had to go out over my skis in 2012, but it's all coming true, and now it's really true. If you follow the ball from JS in 1995, which had these bitwise operators, had implicit and even explicit ways to deal with integers, it allowed ASM.js to be discovered. The mad scientists at Mozilla Research carved nature at the joint, as Plato said, and they found ASM.js within JavaScript. And then they formalized it, and now it's being extended, and it's also being mirrored with WebAssembly, which can then cut loose and go its own way. So as I said on Twitter, this is the sound of inevitability. That was actually Agent Smith's line, so I don't want to be the villain too much, but he was right about WebAssembly. And then I said this ends, and somebody, Ron Korvig, said, can this really end? I thought you said always bet on JS. And I said it ends in the hypostatic union of JavaScript and your CPU running WebAssembly forever, a Birkenstock lightly treading upon Java's face. In other words, I think the web will equal native thanks to WebAssembly and all the great APIs coming in, including service workers. So always bet on JS. Thank you very much.